everybody, it is Jeff West with Jeff West Properties and Platinum Key Realty Group. I'm doing a video today in April 2020 to address the COVID-19 pandemic and how it is affecting real estate and how we expect it to affect real estate in the near future. There's a lot of fear, a lot of concern in society right now over things like, am I going to get sick? What's the economy going to do and how's it going to affect my pocketbook? And can I even get the basic resources that I need, like toilet paper? So we have doctors and we have nurses and we have grocery store workers who are working around the clock to provide for those needs and to help alleviate some of the fear that our society has right now. Now, I'm a real estate guy, and I figured the best way that I could help is to address the issue of how it affects home prices both now and in the near future to maybe help alleviate some of those fears as well. I've talked to several people over the last few weeks, and the questions that I've gotten I've put together in this video to try to address. One of the questions I get often is, if we're headed for a recession, what does it do to the real estate market? Now, the first thing I want people to understand is that a recession does not equal a housing crisis. Now, if we look back historically, what we will find is that pandemics, if they cause recession, are usually what's called a V-shaped recession, which is a sharp recession that recovers quickly enough to provide little damage to the economy and home prices. Harvard Business Review says it this way: it's worth looking back at history to place the potential impact path of COVID-19 empirically. In fact, V-shapes monopolize the empirical landscape of prior shocks, including epidemics such as SARS, the 1968 H3N2 flu, the 1958 H2N2 flu, and the 1918 Spanish flu. Now look at what John Burns has to say from John Burns Consulting. He says, historical analysis showed us that pandemics are usually V-shaped, sharp recessions that recover quickly enough to provide little damage to home prices. And some very cutting-edge search engine analysis by our information management team showed the current slowdown is playing out similarly thus far. Now, if we look back at other recessions, even those that don't have anything to do with the pandemic, what we have found is that most of the time they don't affect housing prices. In fact, Doug Bryan, CEO of Mend Property Management, says this: with the exception of two recessions, the Great Recession from 2007 to 2009, and the Gulf War recession from 1990 to 1991, no other recessions have impacted the U.S. housing market, according to Freddie Mac Home Price Index data collected from 1975 to 2018. Now, this graph shows the last 5 recessions and what they've done to home prices. In 1980, home prices were still up 6.1%, followed by 3.5% in 1981. There was a dip of 1.9% in 1991 during the Gulf War crisis. Then in 2001, during 9/11 and the tech bubble, housing prices were still up 6.6%. Of course, in 2008, we had the big one. We had the drop of 19.7% in the Great Recession. So that brings me to the next question that a lot of people have been asking. Is this going to be more like 2008? And to that, I answer emphatically, no. This is not going to be like 2008. The 2008 recession was all about housing. It was about lax lending standards that led to a mortgage crisis. It was about out of control appreciation on the houses that led to the bubble bursting. Now, compared to that, let's look where we are today. First of all, people back then were over leveraged in their houses. Look at the total home equity cashed out during that time compared to today. In 2005, it was $263 billion. 2006, $321 billion. In 2007, $240 billion. Whereas in the years leading up to today, you had cash outs of $71 billion, $87 billion, and $74 billion. Much, much less than you had during the Great Recession. And what that means is, on average today, people have much more equity in their homes than they did back in 2008. They're not over leveraged like they were back then. This graph shows that 53.8% of all homes in America have at least 50% equity. And on top of that, 37% of all houses in America are owned free and clear, and then another 26.7% that have at least 50% equity in their homes. Now, the reason that people cashed out so much in the years leading up to the Great Recession was because their homes were becoming more and more valuable. The home prices were growing. It was really an unsustainable rate. Now, if you look at this graph that is provided by Black Knight, you'll see that home values were growing in the years leading up to the Great Recession. 8.6%, 6.5%, 8.5, 8.7, 12.5, and 11.4%. Now you compare that to the years leading up to today, and what we have is a much more manageable, sustainable growth rate. And yes, home prices are more expensive today. They are more valuable today than they were back in 2008. But people's purchasing power is much greater than it was back then as well. This chart from Zillow and National Association of Realtors shows that back in 2006, the percent of median income needed to purchase a median-priced home was 25.4% of people's income, whereas today it stands at only 14.8%. So the buying power is much greater on average. Now, you can say that's all well and good, and that we have so much more purchasing power, but what about unemployment? Our unemployment situation is out of control right now. How is that going to affect the housing market? According to the Labor Department, between the week of March 15th and 21st, 3.34 million people filed for unemployment. The very next week, that number jumped to 6.65. Now, as we stand today, that number is exponentially greater, and we don't know what the number is because so few people can even get through to the unemployment office because there is such a great need. Now, let's unpack that and look at that a little closer. If you look at this chart, you'll see that 59.5% of people filing for unemployment are in the food services and drink places, servers and bartenders. And then next you have construction workers at 4.1%, healthcare office workers, not doctors and nurses, but office workers, 6.1%, child daycare workers, 2.7%, temporary help services, 7.1%, retail trade stores, 6.6%, the accommodation industry, the hotel industry, 4.1%, and then there's a 9.8% of unemployment that are not in those sectors. Now let's put that in perspective. These jobs aren't permanently gone, right? They're just temporary furloughs. Do you not think that as soon as we have the opportunity to leave the house, we're not going to go to our favorite restaurant immediately, our favorite bar? Do you not think we're going to go out shopping again because we finally have the right to? Do you not think that parents have that childcare company on speed dial after having to spend 2 months with their kids while trying to work? The jobs are coming back. Now, there are a lot of organizations putting projections together. I'm using the Goldman Sachs model, but according to Goldman Sachs, the unemployment rate projections are going to be 15% this year, but next year they're going to go down to 6 to 8%, followed by 5% the next year and 4% the year after that. Now, continuing with the Goldman Sachs report, if you look at what they project our current unemployment situation to be in this crisis and compare that to the Great Depression and the Great Recession, you see we're poised to be in much better shape coming out of this than we were during those two time periods. So I know things look bad, but if you really look at it, this current crisis we're in resembles a lot more the crisis we were in during 9/11 than some of these other recessions. So if you remember the chart I showed earlier, during the 9/11 crisis, home values still grew by 6.6% in 2001. So if we look at all of this data, if we look at the history and we compare it to where we are today, things look pretty good. We look like we're in pretty good shape and poised to come out of this okay, at least as far as the home market is concerned. So if there's one thing I could encourage people not to do, it's panic. Don't panic. The economist Ben Bernanke, who was the chair for 2 terms for the Federal Reserve, including during the Great Recession, says this: "My results do suggest that, in the absence of the panic, the declines in unemployment, consumption, output in the early stages of the Great Recession would have been significantly less severe." So what Bernanke was saying was, though the Great Recession was really bad, it wouldn't have been as bad if people just hadn't panicked. And so that's what I'm encouraging today. Don't panic. Don't feel like you have to sell your house. If you do need to sell your house, that's okay too. The values are still good. I just got through showing a client a home right before coming to film this video. Houses are still moving. Interest rates are still at historic lows. So if you need to buy, if you need to sell, now is a great time. It's still a great time to do it. Now, I do need to say, if you are looking to buy or sell, I'd love the opportunity to earn your business. You can find me at jeffwestproperties.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.